Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi, and today we're doing a get ready with me featuring some new makeup items as well as the Sonia G Sheer Buffer brush. So this is going to be our focus for the video, and this was requested by a viewer. So I do already have a video on this brush, and I'll leave that linked down below in the description box. But we're going to use this for as many different applications today as we can. And again, we're going to be featuring a bunch of new things as well. Now, just a note, this is not the final look. If you look at the thumbnail, that's the look for today. But I realized when I was editing that the intro did not get uploaded properly. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy this and I hope it's helpful. All right, so we're gonna start off with sunscreen. This is the Toty Solaria Mineral Sunscreen. It's SPF 50+. This is just a regular sunscreen. It's not the CC cream or anything like that. So just shaking that first, and you can see it is, well, I'm gonna put it like this, but it is a tinted sunscreen, but you can see it. See how it like kind of goes on white and then it'll darken a little bit to the color of the tint, but it doesn't really give my skin any color. So here's half the face. Let me bring you in a little. Okay, so this side has a sunscreen, this side doesn't. And again, I was just touching it, so it's a little bit more red, but it's mostly faded. So you can see that you're not getting a ton of color from the actual sunscreen itself. And let's go ahead and we're going to use this, sort of as our base today. I think we're going to skip a primer and just go in with the next product. So I wanted to go ahead and try out the Hourglass face tint. I do have that in the Bobbi Brown. I've been wearing the Bobbi Brown. But I think to really show how this brush performs, we want to go in with something with more coverage. So we're going to use the Ritual Defeat 3-drop weightless serum foundation, and I wear shade 110, and I really like this. It is oil based, but there is pretty full coverage with this. So I think this might actually be 4 drops because my first one was a little bit big, but we'll see. Let's go ahead. We'll start just with half the face. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take this sheer buffer. And you can see how that gives you kind of a soft blend. You can definitely see I have more coverage right here. All right, so take a look at the cheek area. You can see I've got coverage, but this is actually just a little bit of my finger, just kind of spraying that out a little bit, but let's see how this builds. So that was actually a little bit too much product, I think, but you can see how the brush really blends that out smoothly, and I have like a nice solid base now. So let's go ahead and do the other side here. And I have to say the brush is just so soft on the skin, which, I think makes it a pleasure to use. Just gonna put a tiny little dab here. So I don't even have to use concealer with this foundation. I could totally just use the foundation, but I do want to go in with a little concealer. And look at this though, let me back you up. You can see that this brush really gives you a great smooth coverage with the serum foundation. I think it works really well. So I use a microfiber cloth to kind of wipe off my brushes in between everything, and we're going to go ahead, we're going to do blush, but first let's move on to concealer, and I'm going to use the Surratt concealer in shade 3. All right, so here's the Surratt concealer, and you can see we've already got a little bit coming up there. I don't need much, so I'm just going to use my finger actually for this. And you know what? Let's use the brush. Would this be my concealer brush of choice? No, but you know, it's definitely something that you can use for that. It's a little big for that, but how awesome would it be if she made a concealer size brush like this? I think that would be great. It gives you such a nice light, you know, it's almost like just a light, I don't even know how to describe it, like a feathery touch under the eyes. So you don't end up getting so much product in like creases or lines or anything. So I think it would be a great option. I'm actually going to take the concealer in number 1 as well and just add a little bit down here for some brightening. Go ahead, I'll use a brush for this. I haven't been sleeping super well recently, so, you know, the circles are a little bit more obvious to me. All right, so that is our base using the sheer buffer. Let's move on to blush. And honestly, this works so well with, you know, a deeper pigmented, you know, powder blush or a liquid. And you know what? I think let's do both. So let's start with the liquid. We're going to use the Valentino. This is the new LiquiRosso liquid lipsticks. They're made for lips and cheeks. This one here is Nude in Motion. I have been playing with the formula, so you know, I've been testing these for a while, but I'm still waiting for my order from Valentino with a ton of shades. So I'm going to put, you know, a swatch of this on my hand, and we're going to dip the brush into this. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of swirl that out a little bit, and let's go ahead and see how this performs. I mean, look how natural that looks. Can totally buff that out to get a really sheer, like flushed cheek color. It doesn't really look like makeup. I love that. But I'm going to clean off the brush and we'll use powder on the other side. So for the powder, we're going to take the Hermes blush. This is the 58 Rose Cuivre, and it swatches like this, so it's vaguely similar to this shade. So let's go ahead and we're going to get just a little bit on here, just tapping off the excess on to my cloth, and let's go ahead and you can see it still goes on super easily. I'm actually going to wipe a little bit more off the brush and kind of just blend that out a little bit. So it works well with liquids and with powders, and I think it gives a really nice look on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and add a little powder on top of the liquid blush just to kind of even things out. Both sides still look pretty different. So I'm going to take the Givenchy. This is the Prism Libre Pressed Powder number 3 Voile Rosé, and I'm just going to kind of buff out the edges and so forth. So just going to kind of swirl this in everywhere. Again, tapping off the excess and just kind of going around the blush area. All right, I think they look a bit more similar now. All right, next we're moving on to eyes, and I'm taking the Cle de Peau quad, and this is just a Tanseido large shader brush. So I'm going into the primer with this and just gonna go ahead and dust this all over the lids, all the way up to the brow. I really love the little subtle shimmer that you get up on the brow bone with this. Next, I wiped off the brush. We're going to go into the light blue shade here, and I'm gonna go ahead and just dust this over the mobile lid. Since this is a large brush, it is going into the crease a little bit as well. And since we're sticking with kind of a one brush type of video, let's go ahead. We'll just do one brush with this as well. So I'm gonna actually get just a little bit on the on here and dab this on the outer corner. This is definitely a large brush to be doing this with. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit more of the light blue and just kind of dab over that a little bit. You can see how much more intense that light blue is there. It's not even just that we've got the darker shade underneath. It kind of makes it seem like it has a bit more sheen there as well. So I wiped off the brushes as well as I can, and I'm using the clean side against the skin and just kind of going to crease a little bit. I'm not really going for a defined crease today. And then let's go for a light eyeliner. This is the LH Cosmetics from Linda Hallberg in Gel Flash. And you can see it is a bit of a, there's a bit of a champagne golden hue to it, but there's also some silver. So I think that's just a really cool color. And I'm going to use a little bit on the lower lash line as well. Now, her crayons are incredible. I love the LH Cosmetic crayons. And, you know, you can use them like anywhere on the face, really. So I think they are fantastic. This particular one is really old. It's one of my oldest ones. So it is not quite as creamy anymore. It is starting to get a little drier. But they are one of the creamiest, most well-lasting, you know, eyeliner crayon type products on the market. So really, really love these. All right, so that's it for the shadow and the liner. I'm just gonna take a second and do my lashes and brows. Now for highlight, we're going back in with the Sheer Buffer, and this is one of the new shades. It's not a new shade, it's new to me. But this is one of the shades from Ritual de Fille that I recently picked up. It's called Lunaris. And look at this. I mean, isn't that gorgeous? Go ahead and put that on here. Ooh, I really want to use this. But it doesn't really go with this. This is definitely cooler in tone than I was thinking. Actually, let me go with a different highlighter. I'm actually going to take this from La Bouche Rouge instead. And you can see it's just a subtle pale pink highlighter. This is their pink one, but they do have other shades. So I'm going to go ahead and get a whole bunch on my hand here, and I'm going to dip the brush into it. All right, so I've got some on the brush. Let's see. This is a very subtle highlight, so really you're not going to see so much of the color, but you should see the sheen. Do you see the sheen in comparison? So it just gives a little bit of radiance there. Again, it's not imparting much color, but I didn't want more color today on top of this blush. All right, and then I'm just gonna follow up with the Valentino liquid lipstick. So I went with just one layer of the same shade I used on the cheeks, which is the 151R Nude Emotion. And if I added a second layer, it would definitely be more pigmented, but I wanted kind of more of that softer look. So this is the final look, utilizing almost exclusively the Sonia G Sheer Buffer. Let's take a quick look at each of the products that I used today and just some brief thoughts on them. We have the Toty Mineral Sunscreen. This is SPF 50+. Your active ingredients are titanium dioxide at 7% and zinc oxide at 6%. We have 1.69 fluid ounces or 50 milliliters, and it's supposed to be very water resistant for 80 minutes. And we have a 9-month shelf life. It's made in Spain, and this is actually made at one of the, premier and one of the best, supposedly best sunscreen labs. So, definitely has great qualities to it. So I've been enjoying this. This has been my daily sunscreen, and yeah, I think it's a nice basic sunscreen. So again, I've tried a few of their products. I like the CC cream. I like this sunscreen. I did not like the creamy compact. So that's kind of where I am on the brand, but I do really like this daily sunscreen here. Next, we use the Ritual Defy 3-drop serum foundation. This has 30 milliliters or 1 fluid ounce. It has a 1-year shelf life and it's made in the US. And I really like this. You know, I wear a shade 110. You have a dropper button to depress here, and you really only need 3 drops, and it is pretty full coverage. Now it does have oils in there, so you want to make sure that you shake it before use. But I have not had any issues with this with performance or anything, even in the heat and humidity. So I think it's a really, really great foundation. I've been, wearing this a ton. It does give you a bit of dewy radiance to your skin, but it doesn't have that pearly effect that sometimes we see with dewy foundations and skin tints and so forth. I personally don't like the pearly look all over my face, so I think this is great. Next, we took a look at the Surratt concealers, and I used 2 shades. Let me go ahead and swatch those. So this one here is shade 3, which is going to be our deeper shade. This one matches my skin tone. So if I'm looking for a concealer with exact skin tone match, that is a great shade for it. And then for brightening, we have the shade 1, which is pretty white. It's basically like an ivory shade. It is pure white almost. So you can see these shades. Using them in conjunction is typically how I've been using them. And I do have a separate video on these. But in that video, I forgot to compare it to the Chanel Sublimage. So let me just bring that out briefly. So this is the Chanel Sublimage Le Correcteur Yeux, and I have shade 02 in this. And I have to say, I love this concealer. It is one of my favorites. You can see that this shade is going to be a bit more peach. It's a little bit of a brighter peach than the Surratt in shade 3. This texture for the Chanel, it feels more like an eye cream. It feels very creamy, very moisturizing, more like a whipped moisturizer type texture. And it still gives you pretty full coverage. So I would have to say that, between the two of them, I actually think you can get more coverage with a thinner layer of the Chanel than the Surratt. They're both very comfortable. They perform very well. The Surratt is more of a medium coverage, in my opinion. You can build that up to full, but it looks best at more of a medium to high, type level. Oh, the Sublimage, I feel like you can build it up a little bit more, and it looks a little bit more seamless built up than the Surratt does. Formula-wise, I think they're both fantastic. It's just, it depends what kind of coverage you want, what kind of applicator and so forth, but they are both fantastic. So there's that. And just one more quick comparison. This is the Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate in 0N0. And I wanted to show you how that compares to the shade Ivory, or the shade 1 in the Surratt, which is more of a true ivory. The Tom Ford has a touch of beige in it, whereas the Surratt is going to be more stark. And just one more, this is the Givenchy in N95. Do have that compared in the video with the Surratt concealer, but you can see that this one is, it's almost like the exact match of the Surratt in number 3. The Givenchy is slightly peachier, perhaps a little bit brighter, but they're very, very close. Next, we went in with the Valentino LiquiRosso lipstick, and you can use this on lips and cheeks. This is the shade 151R Nude Emotion, and let me just go ahead and kind of buff a little bit of that out as well. The one thing, I'll talk about this in my full video, but the applicator is great to get a small amount of product, but if you are trying to get more on your hand, you do kind of have to go back and forth a few times. So this is 151R. I have to say, it blends out beautifully for a blush. It lasts all day as a blush. On the lips, I wouldn't say it's incredibly long lasting. It's not one of those transfer proof, lasts all day liquid lipsticks, but I have been enjoying it. It has a little bit of like a silicone texture on your lips. You have some like slip on them that doesn't truly fade away for quite a while, like hours. So I can feel like a little thin layer of like oil or silicone or something. Nothing enough to make my lips feel like greasy or slick per se, but if I rub them together, it doesn't feel powdery and dry. It feels like there's a little bit of something there. And we also use the Hermes blush in 58 Rose Cuivre, which is a powder blush. This is one of their luminescent ones that came out recently. So you can see that this shade here is going to be a bit peachier versus more of a rosy nude. And you can see that we have some iridescence. Overall, the Hermes blushes are always a nice quality. I think this is a nice color, and you know, these luminescent ones really work well for summer because they kind of have a built-in highlighter, but I did want to go in for just a little bit more sheen. So we use the La Bouche Rouge in pink, and you can pick your own cases. I picked this one here. So this one is the La Lumiere Rose. So you can see here, you know, it's a really beautiful kind of soft pink. Put that right down here. It's a little bit hard to see perhaps on camera because it's not going to be super bright. This is going to be a subtle pink. It's actually a warmer pink, so it leans warm. It's not really a cool tone pink, and it gives you that extra sheen and luminosity without sparkle or shimmer, which I didn't need, again, because of that Hermes blush, which actually has some shimmer in it. You can see the shimmer. As for eyes, we went in with the Cle de Peau and the, I forget what the name is off the top of my head. It's something like Azure Blue Sea or Blue Skies. So these are the 4 shades in here, and I have to say I really love it. I think these formulas are fantastic. It's definitely a hefty price tag for these, but I love the subtle sheen and shimmer you get from these without being super glittery. You don't really have fallout as an issue. They last all day, and I think the colors are just really gorgeous on the lid. So really happy with that. And the brush that I use for that is the Tanseido large shader brush. And yeah, I like this. It's undyed goat hair. It's smooth, it's soft, and the curvature of here makes this really good for all over as well as in the crease. The fact that it's undyed goat hair, I can use it with any type of medium. And I already talked about this eyeliner here. This is the LH Cosmetics in Gel Flash. I love the Flash series in particular. You can see they have a metallic glint, and this is almost like a white gold champagne. And I think it's just a really pretty effect. And I like having sometimes like a brightening eyeliner versus something deeper in the lash line. For lashes, I use the Sisley So Stretch Mascara. Brows is the Victoria Beckham Brow Blade in Taupe. So overall, really loving those. And then for lips, I went back in with the Nude in Motion shade from Valentino. And again, it gives just this beautiful, soft feathery effect on your lips with one sheer layer, but you can build it up for something more pigmented and bold. Now on to this Sonia G Sheer Buffer. I have to say, you know, I do have a video featuring this brush, but this was requested to kind of see some more uses for it. And I have to say, I love this brush. It really is a great all-in-one brush. You know, you've got the duo fiber here. This is your Fusion series, which means that we are looking at a mix of undyed goat hair as well as 2 different types of synthetic fibers. So, you know, sometimes those synthetic brushes, they can feel a little plasticky, a little overly smooth, and they can feel really soft when you first use them. But, you know, a year or 2 later, they start feeling like a little rougher and scratchier. And that's not true of all synthetic brushes, but there are many that are like that. The technology has come a long way, so I feel like the newer ones are definitely coming out better. But you know, that's one of the reasons why there are 2 different types of synthetic fibers in this brush, because it helps alleviate that. It gives you the feeling more of something. I wouldn't say this feels like a natural fiber brush, but it's more akin to that than your traditional synthetic because you have that blend, that mix of fibers. And I feel like we've been definitely seeing a lot more brushes coming out with a mix of both undyed and goat hair as well as synthetic fibers mixed in. You can see like Hakuhodo and Chikuhodo have definitely been, well, actually not so much Chikuhodo, but mostly Hakuhodo. A lot of their brushes that were previously all undyed goat hair have now been moving towards a mix with synthetic fibers, partly for cost reasons, availability, and so forth. And I feel like the mix alone really helps alleviate some of the issues that people have had with synthetic brushes over time. Now back to the particular brush design here. So you can see that the majority of the fibers go to here, and then we have some longer ones as well. And this really helps you get more of a softer airbrushed finish. It also kind of reduces the level of pigmentation, because if you press harder, you can definitely kind of buff something into your skin more. And that works really great, particularly with some of the liquids and so forth, anything you want to kind of buff in. And then you can lighten up the pressure, and then these longer fibers here will kind of brush out the edges, they'll smooth it out, they will remove excess pigment and so forth. So that's one of the great effects of a duo fiber brush like this. We also have, you know, the fact that you could even just try to utilize these longer hair fibers, and that's what I like to do with some of the more strongly pigmented blushes. For example, Lady Gaga House Lab blushes, those are pretty strongly pigmented. And so when I use some of those deeper shades in particular, I try to get the product just on the tip and brush it on here. And you can apply the product that way. You can even then press a little bit harder to kind of buff it in more versus having it just spread out with the longer fibers. But if you're applying just with the longer fibers, you're getting a lot less product up than you would normally. So that is another great benefit of these brushes. So these brushes, I feel like they are just so multifunctional because of this. You definitely have different ways to use this. Now, as for the buffing capability, if you take away these longer fibers and you feel this, it actually has a pretty firm buffing capability. It's not going to be as firm as something like the Face One, which is a little bit more dense, and well, it's also bigger. But this one here, I would say, is very similar to the Smooth Buffer. Okay, so take a look at this. You can see the Smooth Buffer is actually going to be a little bit shorter than where our longer fibers come up. You can see there. And so this will be a little bit denser, has a little bit stronger buffing motion. But if you take away these, you can see it's actually going to be fairly similar, and the diameter is fairly similar as well. So if you don't have this brush and you've been trying to figure out if you'd like this, if you have the Smooth Buffer, that might be one way to kind of, judge this. It's going to feel a little bit airier and lighter than this when you're applying pressure. But again, you can get kind of just a featherweight application just with the longer fibers as well. So I hope this has been helpful. I'd love to know your thoughts on the brush, the products that we use today. Let me know what you've tried, what you have been enjoying. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful day.